All right. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for being a part of this panel. We will use the chat box for questions. And at the end, of course, you can take off your microphone and speak at that time. So we have our panelists with us, but before we start, I just wanted to give you some overview as to why this conversation is important. Let's see, did it click? Go next. So there's an elaborate series of biases that often are unintended that begin actually at preschool and go all through the education system, right? And this is a statement by Kapoor Klein, one of the researchers in women's studies. In technology, we know that most of the technology workforce in the United States is 90% white or Asian and 75% male. So that's a significant number when you think about how many women are working out there in industry and how much more opportunity there is for the female in the workforce. Do disparities exist? Well, if you look at this chart, I think that speaks to itself, right? When you think about the individuals who are completing a computer science degree compared to our male counterparts and what's happening and the attainment of a bachelor's degree, women are only 18% achieving bachelor's degrees. And for those of you who have been looking for jobs in that space, you know that that's one of the minimal skills that's needed. The other piece is, of course, industry credentials, right? So there are opportunities for women in this space. When you also talk about disparities in participation and advancement in the tech workforce, there's also a dearth of color, if you will, in that space. So if you look at the numbers, 2 times lower for our Black sisters and brothers and the Latinx population. Again, opportunities for equity in this space. This is just a huge chart. And when you have time later on to go back and look in the Woovu app, just to look at this PowerPoint, you can see that companies are hiring. And this is the variety of individuals, the population mix in those companies. And you have it right here for you to make your judgment calls. But what really stands out, if you look at this, is the green, right? The green is very small. Just depending on the company that you're looking for. Amazon has made great strides in ensuring that there is a mix. But when we talk about mix, we can't forget that mixes of the variety of individuals in an environment is impacted by the people that you're serving, right? So we do want companies to mirror the population they're serving. So if it makes sense for a company because of where they're located, we're not here to judge, we're just here to see how can we pull our sisters up and help them to make the difference. So why are we addressing underrepresentation in technology? It is an urgent priority because if you look at the data right now, you can see that there is a lack of diversity in the tech sector. And if you remember the conversation we just had not too long ago, there is the future is tech, right? And if the future is tech and our females or women who are working, who need to come out of poverty, if we don't pull our sisters up, what will happen is that female population will have lots of homes that are challenged. And if you look at the data also tells you that a home where the female has gotten good skills and is working and is able to bring in a decent living wage into the household, that it makes a difference for their family and move them out of generational poverty. So they're really true deep benefits for our economy to have representation from these groups and make a difference for all. As I just said, the future of workforce is tech, automation, need for upskilling, and need for reskilling. So now it's time for us to get into the conversation. So I will start with my introduction. My name is Loretta O'Brien. I serve Miami-Dade College as the Vice Provost for Workforce Programs and Professional Development. And that's my bio up there on the screen. And we have in our presence just an amazing group of individuals who are going to speak to get their feedback. We have some prepared questions. So we'll start from the questions and the conversation and then go on into an open Q&A. All right. So on my end, I see you on the bottom corner, Dr. Quincy Brown. Can you please do a brief intro?
Sure. I Dr. Quincy Brown. So for those of you trying to find me in your squares, have been part of this computer science computing education community for a while now. I'm a computer scientist by training, have been a computer science professor. I've also worked in the government policy space and in the nonprofit space. And yeah, I guess everyone can read the particulars.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. Dr. Gates?
Sure. So my name is Ankitos Gates, and I am Senior Vice Provost for Faculty Affairs at the University of Texas at El Paso. I just started that position in August of 2020. And prior to that, I served for many years as a chair of computer science and also the Associate VP for the Office of Research and Sponsored Projects. I also lead the Computing Alliance of Hispanic Serving Institutions. It was really great to hear today's conversation about Includes and to learn that Includes is actually sponsoring this event. We're one of 8 national Includes alliances that's focused on recruitment, retention, and advancement of Hispanics in computing. We're the only one focused primarily on computing and on Hispanics. And so we're working with over 60 institutions of higher ed and partners across the country, really looking to accelerate the rate at which Hispanics earn credentials. By 2030, we hope that 20% of those that earn credentials will be Hispanics. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Dr. Winslow?
Yes, hello, I'm Hyunjin Seo, Associate Professor of Digital Media at University of Kansas. I'm also founding director of the Center for Digital Inclusion at KU. Through my role, I have taught technology courses and undergraduate, graduate levels at our university, but also offers technology education for marginalized populations, including low-income minority older adults, and also women recently released from jail or prison. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that intro. So as you see, we are surrounded by really, really amazing ladies who are going to share with us a little bit more about their insights and what they've done. So we have our first question, which is, what are the limitations of current computing curriculum to facilitate equitable pathways for diverse learners to transition into computing or technology? Anyone can get us going on that topic.
So I'll start. I'll share that I think some of the limitations of curricula are also involve who's creating the curricula, right? And so we have most computer science faculty have gone through the academic route and then become faculty, and then they go rise up the faculty ranks. And so I think that understanding equity in when it comes to pathways and creating these pathways requires an understanding of all of the places where people come and all of the reasons why they seek this to have these skills. And I don't know that enough people who are on the other side of this, who are providing the learning, have an understanding of that. Those who are designing the programs and all that really have an understanding of that, because it's just not been their experience, right?
Yeah, and I can jump in. I agree totally with you, what you're saying, Quincy. And that's one of the things that the Computing Alliance, or CASI, is really focused on. We're working together, trying to learn from each other. We're mainly Hispanic serving institutions, which means that we serve anywhere from 25% to almost 100% because we work with Puerto Rico, Mayagüez. UTEP is at 80% Hispanic. But one of the things that we really have done to upgrade curriculum, if you will, is that we've developed really strong partnerships with industry. And I'll just highlight a few things. One of the things that Google approached us about was saying that many of the students coming from minority serving institutions don't do well on the interview side when they are applying to Google. So what we started was a program working with Google over about 6 months with a software engineer and others at Google, as well as faculty from across the Alliance, creating a problem-solving course. It was a 1 credit. There are 3 versions of that. 2 are 1 credit, 1 is 2 credit, 1 is general problem solving, the other one's around computational thinking, and the third one's around algorithmic thinking. And from that, we created a community practice. We're getting adoption around the country. It's really competency based. So the students are working toward coming up with an approach on how to solve problems. Out of that, students have created coding clubs. And so there's been a really big uptick on how well the students now are interviewing. We have a Google Tech Exchange program where students actually spend a semester at Google. Right now it's all virtual. We're working with Howard, other HBCUs, and then COSI institutions. But we've also been working with Lockheed Martin, Microsoft, Oracle on bringing in providing more experiences around cybersecurity and AI. I will say that one of the really important things when we start looking at diversity is having a diversified workforce that really understands biases in AI and in data. And so I think that those are the big changes that I'm seeing.
Leslie, I really agree with what the speakers said, and was excited to hear different initiatives that are taking place. In terms of limitations, I think, first of all, I want to make it clear that I speak primarily from my experience of teaching digital media courses at a university and also offering technology education for marginalized populations, in particular, marginalized women in informal settings. And I think one of the main limitations is stimulating projects involving real-world businesses, organizations, they can be attractive to a broader group of learners, tend to come later in the curriculum, for example, as capstone project. It is important to introduce, such projects early in the curriculum. And also, this emphasis on experiential learning and problem-solving approach can help reduce the potential of alienating those who have lower computing self-efficacy. Another limitation I want to mention is not being able to better understand and accommodate different learning styles and interests, especially among underrepresented learners. Of course, when you have a big lecture class, it is challenging to accommodate different learning needs. However, often we see the even small classes often like tailored approaches responding to different levels of computing self-efficacy and their career goals. So recently, when I have, as I have led multiple multidisciplinary projects offering technology education for marginalized populations in informal learning settings, our experience showed that curricula tailored for learners' needs and career aspirations were helpful. And this not only contributes to their positive learning outcomes, but also helps to nurture the sense of belonging.
And so I wonder what I thought about just now is, a limitation due to lack of imagination, right? And so as you said, just rethinking about what the course sequence is, right? Putting some of those more explorative courses that allow you to reach into other areas earlier in the curriculum, in the degree plan, right? I mean, all of those things I think require, a willingness to just reimagine all of it.
That's right. I think that there's really, I think a lot of females coming into the program don't really understand those multiple pathways, and they see computer science really just as programming. And I think it's really incumbent upon those teaching the introductory courses that you really bring in problems that can look at social impact and how you can connect it to the community, and really trying to engage the students much more.
Well, so it seems like informal learning is important, starting early is important in the curriculum. So now that sort of leads to our next question, because if we are talking about exposure and showing students early enough what's happening or what they can be, right? What what can we be done by academic organizations or institutions to develop academic programs targeting non-traditional learners and or returning students? So we've heard the example with the informal learning by Dr. So. What else? What else could be done?
Well, I can contribute to this because it's something that I think is a real challenge that we need to be looking at. I'm serving right now on a NASM committee on women of color in tech. And the group I was focused with was looking at non-traditional paths. And one of the things that we think is really important, especially in computer science or any technology field, is the importance of badging and credentialing. A lot of the entry points, especially for minoritized students, is through community colleges. And can institutions of higher ed begin giving some credit to that, right? You have expertise, or you can show competencies based on a valued badging or credential program. And that could really be an entry point, I think, in terms of not having to retake courses that you may already know and get credit. And then also thinking about how do you help those students level so that they can fast track through the program.
I can also add a little bit more. I agree with Dr. Gates about the importance of credentialing, because for our program, working with non-traditional students, our program, our approach offering certificate has been hugely popular and a good motivator, really important motivator for our participants. And also, I think that one of the most important things that I think universities and academic institutions probably should do is to strengthen collaborations with community partners, industry partners, yes, but also community organizations that work directly with underserved and underrepresented populations. There are, each city has multiple organizations that serve the needs of marginalized populations. So by working with them, you are better able to identify the group that you want to inspire, but also these organizations can help retain them as well. And technology education programs that I run for immigrants, women returning from jail or prison, and low-income minority older adults could have not been achieved without close collaborations with community organizations. And again, they help identify prospective participants and retain them through the program. And also, I have found it useful to use interest-based learning approach. And I briefly mentioned that earlier, but interest is an effective motivator for learning. And this framework really designs learning activities and learner-specific, around learner-specific interest and previous research in technology education and our own experience of offering technology education to marginalized women suggests that properly understanding their learning interests and incorporating them into curriculum is essential to really attract and retain underrepresented populations.
Yeah, and to that I'll say, I think it's also important to realize that we kind of made this binary of traditional and non-traditional, but I think that's false, right? I mean, there are people who are coming in, just as Dr. So just mentioned, from so many different ways, right? And so there's also not a one size non-traditional learner pathway. And so I think that's one of the things I would suggest that people do, is to really take the time to look at specifically who you're targeting, because their needs, as may be different, right, than another group's needs, that may be different than another group's needs. And so again, designing one, non-traditional path might not actually be the best for any particular group, right? Trying to be a catch-all, but to really be, explicit and clear about who you're targeting and what their specific needs are.
Yeah,
So it sounds like, Dr. Brown, you're saying that institutions tend to create these career pathways for on-ramps, right, for different groups. And we need to be a little bit more open, embed, the PLA or the prior learning assessments type of grid, open opportunities for other people to jump on. And I think I just stepped on you, Dr. Gates. What else did you want to add?
No, that I think, what Quincy, the point she makes is absolutely right. I mean, you start labeling and people, and that's not the way we should be looking at this. And what I was going to add to that was just talking about the importance of bringing asset-based thinking into the department, where you're looking at the assets that the students are bringing. When we start talking about women re-entering, reskilling, or even talking about veterans, they bring so much knowledge with them that we have to figure out ways to acknowledge that and to identify ways to allow them to advance more rapidly through the program because of their backgrounds. That's a hard thing to do in academia, but we really need to have those deep discussions around that.
Yes, it definitely is a hard thing, and I can tell you from experience that the more you try to make things in a way that flows, sometimes we end up stepping on each other, right?
Yeah, exactly.
In the process. So this doesn't nicely lead into, and forgive that typo, I just noticed that it says question 4 while we're actually on the third question. How do learners returning from career break who are interested in computing fit in with today's world and tomorrow's workforce, consisting of many MTech specialists, right? So we're talking about the challenges of getting people onboarded and these various on-ramps that we currently have in academia. But how do we get our learners to know about these on-ramps and be able to quickly upskill, because that's what may be required depending on the individual to get into the workforce. Are there any tips that you have based on your experience?
So I can take a stab at the first part of that. How do we get them to know? I think one way, and one thing that's important, is for people to be transparent about their own paths, right? There are these, people don't talk enough about, what didn't work and how many times they might have tried and when they might have had to stop and, and come back. And so it gives the impression that the way it's done is by, starting when you're 17, 18, right? And going to school for full time for 4 years, graduating 4 years. I mean, very few students actually do that, right? But that's not the story. And so I think this conference and other conferences, when people are sharing their stories and being very clear and transparent about all of the paths, I think that goes a long way in helping people see themselves and see where they are in this big kind of woven, this, I wouldn't say tangle, but this, woven set of pathways in, because I just don't think we do that as a discipline enough, right?
Yeah, I agree with what Dr. Brown said. And of course, there are high demands for technology jobs. And, because I often work with older adults, and I realize that many of them may not have had opportunities to be exposed to or systematically learn computing related topics through their formal education. I'm talking, women in their, sometimes 40s in our program who get to learn and earn the certificates. These are free certificates provided by, sponsored by NSF. The project is funded by NSF, and they actually either get job entry-level positions at technology companies, but also some of them want to become a student in computer science. So it's absolutely right that there are so many different pathways, both in academia, in industry, and how they intersect one another. I think it's also important for us to understand. And so it is really important to identify and develop, different learning pathways, formal and informal learning pathways for those who are interested in entering or re-entering the field.
And we're seeing a lot of nonprofits in this space. And so there's a lot of opportunities through a nonprofit to as entry points. And also another trend right now, especially with large high-tech companies, Google for one, is that they have these programs that are allowing people, regardless of your background, I mean, it could be in liberal arts or another completely non-STEM field, providing them entry through personalized training to get them on board to their organization. And so there's that big trend that we really, from a higher ed point of view, need to be able to look at all of these entry points and be able to think about them. One of the things that UTEP did with Microsoft, and I know that CS for All puts a lot of attention on K through 12 teachers. And so we started a program to prepare them for certification, but also an entry point into the graduate school so that they could deepen their knowledge of computer science. The danger being that they may leave K through 12 being a teacher and then moving into just a technology career. But I think it's so important because of the ubiquity of computing that everyone needs to have that depth of understanding.
Yeah, and I guess I started but didn't share myself. So I started my PhD when I was in my early 30s. I had, I think one daughter was in preschool and the other one was in kindergarten or first grade, something like that. And so I learned a lot about, balancing and the pathways and having to kind of fit into this very traditional, rigid, I would say more rigid than I'd say traditional path while dealing with, life as a 30 some odd year old, young mother. So I saw some of the comments in the chat there, and I want to, applaud all of the people responding to say that, there are a lot of people who've done that. But again,
yeah, I did it as well. I got my PhD when I was 45. I got my master's when I was 40. So yeah, it's never too late. I think I saw someone say that.
Yeah.
Yep, same here. I didn't do it as a spring bean. I did it in my 40s.
Yeah, well, you raise family and you do other things, and then you say, wait a minute, I need to do something that I want to
I
do.
believe you do it when you're ready, because
Yeah,
I think that that's the most important thing, that you start the path and you finish it. So you do it when you're ready and you get it going.
Yes, absolutely.
So that leads us to the
Definitely. I wanted to say something. My name is Claudia. So
Go ahead, Claudia. We lost
I am so
you.
sorry. Yes.
Okay.
So you said non-traditional. Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yes, we hear you now.
So I'm 44 years old, and last year, my daughter, my fourth child, graduated from high school, and I've always pushed them to go to college, try to find a foundation so that they have something to stand on. And they are all now in college. So I had problems that they all finished high school and started.
You're now cracking up, so we're hardly hearing you.
In such a long time. I am so sorry. Go ahead and move forward, because I think it's cutting up because of my internet.
Okay.
But I just
Well,
want
we
to say I'm happy
appreciate
that
your
I
chiming
decided
in.
to.
Claudia, if you don't mind, because your internet is cutting up, your connection, if you can type in the chat, then we can get back to you. We'll read and then we can address it at the end, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Claudia, for jumping in, and all the comments in the chat, we'll address them, but it's very inspirational. So from the academics, we're looking at the next question. It's really, what can academia and industry do, right, to computing? How can we create a more inclusive environment? I think about when I first was working on my environmental science degree, I was the only Black female in my class, and it requires a certain stubbornness, right, for you to get through that experience. What can we do from your experience? What can we share to academia to make life a little bit more inclusive?
Well, I can start. One of the things that I've been working on with AAAS is And AAAS has a framework called Sea Change that is looking at collecting data at the institutional level around diversity, equity, inclusion. This summer, I was part of a committee to look at the disciplinary approach. You know, how do we do this in computer science or physics or biology at the departmental level? And so it's around really collecting data, a department committing to collecting data around faculty, opportunities for faculty advance. What do your numbers look like? What do your students look like? What are the opportunities for professional development of students? The NSF director this morning was talking about all of these great ideas of what has to be present, but doing self-reflection as a department and really hearing the voices of students, having a departmental student climate survey, understanding their own experiences within the classroom, really shines a light on what you have to do to have a DEI focused department where you're really addressing it directly. We did this, we had a grant from NSF from the RED program, Revolutionizing Engineering and Computer Science Education. And we started that process of having a student survey, climate survey. And we found, so rather than just presenting the results, we had the faculty discuss the results in small groups. And faculty and those that maybe tended to not really think it was serious, it was very eye-opening for them. They were saying, oh my God, I didn't know that students didn't feel like their answers were valued. And then it became, okay, what are you going to do to change? And so we have the survey every other year to look at and track, you know, what changes are occurring. But I think you have to, you know, it goes back what was said, I think, in the keynote, and that is that, you know, one of accountability. As a department chair, as faculty, you have to be accountable for what is occurring in the department or in your classroom.
And I think, you know, it's unfortunate. I saw the comments in the chat about having, you know, tough skin. You shouldn't have to have tough skin to get a degree in this field, in any field, right? I mean, that's not a requirement for the work. And so I think that, you know, there's work to be done around, you know, communities and connection to communities. And so, you know, I also work at anitabe.org, and we have the sisters community. And that is a valuable resource for many women to find a sense of support independent of where they are, what stage of their career they are. We have local communities. There are also, you know, the Grace Hopper celebration. And so there are, I think, being connected to others, you know, from whichever parts of your identity you want to do that, I think is really important in helping people know they're not alone. I mean, it is tough, right? And tough skin shouldn't be a requirement. And I think having community to lean on, no one gets through these degrees by themselves. Even the people who pretend that they do have gotten a lot of help. They may not even, sometimes they may not even know it. And I think we also need to make that more transparent and clearer.
So I see we have about 8 minutes left for this session. So I do want an opportunity for us to get one or two of the audience members to either share a thought or some feedback. So Dr. So, if you wanted to add something, and then I would call on one or two of our chat audience members.
Yeah, I'll be brief. If you know, COVID really demonstrated how the crisis situation like this can disproportionately affect women, especially women with childcare responsibilities. So I think that being creative and flexible in offering learning opportunities is very important. And again, providing flexible learning modules to accommodate varying career goals, work schedules, and levels of knowledge and experience in the field. As I mentioned earlier, certificate programs, majority of women in our program, women of color, women who have childcare responsibilities. So by incorporating, you know, lots of online and different that can accommodate their, you know, work and life schedules has been really important. and also being able to systematically assess learners' interests and needs in returning to technology. As one of the speakers mentioned, there are a lot of nonprofit organizations working in this area. One probably an advantage that academia has in running a program like this is we can really do systematic and solid research, and we do mid program and post research of control group and intervention groups. So being able to get our data and assess and incorporate that into the learning modules in developing learning modules has been really helpful.
Mhm. Thank you for that, because this COVID pandemic has shown that what we thought was not possible working at home is very possible. You just need to have enough incentive and enough flexibility to make it happen. Yeah, it's very true.
And we've done at Anita, we've done a survey. We collected data from almost 500 people this summer. That showed that the flexibility is key. That's one of our findings, right? Flexibility is key. It's important for students, and also having faculty who demonstrate empathy. I think people respond to that and they see that, and so I'm hopeful that one of the things that stay with us as we return to air quotes normal is this flexibility and the ability to learn where you are when you need to.
Right. And maybe it's not even the flexibility, it might just be the empathy. Because I think it was always there, but now you can say, okay, I understand that you're home with your kids, but you can work, right?
But I think it's both, right? There's this synchronous model that everyone has to be in one place at one time, learning, in the same way. All that's kind of, for a lot of cases, gone out of the window.
Yes.
And so that flexibility of being able to turn things in when you need, when you can, it's people have adapted in all sorts of ways.
Yes.
That work for faculty. I mean, some of this stuff is hard on faculty, right?
Faculty, very
as well as students. And so being able to
more
find
deliberately
that is good. I'm sorry, Anne.
I say more deliberately thinking about engagement. I mean, which is what I think you all are saying as well. I mean, how do we engage our students? Right. And I hope that carries over,
right. So Michelle Foreman in the chat mentioned that if we reach out to students in underserved neighborhoods and create opportunities for experience in the field, that is a certain way to create that kind of inclusive environment. Then Lucretia, if you can have your mic, I just wanted you to speak on where you said and strength, because Dr. Brown mentioned we should not be thinking about tough skin, right, as a criteria for you to survive in an experience. Do you want to share, Lucretia, your comments? Or did we lose Lucretia already?
No, she's still here.
All right. So maybe she doesn't want to be put on the spot, and that's okay.
Well, she's getting on. I would like to say that unfortunately you do have to have tough skin, but you have to have, you have to have what Quincy said is right there. You have to have these allies. And that's something that we started as an allyship program where juniors, seniors are working with freshmen, sophomores, so that they are checking in with them and helping them navigate, what seems very harsh. I mean, computer science, unfortunately, has that model, maybe because there's so few women. I mean, faculty meetings are really, everyone's harsh on each other, and we have to change that environment and make it more around support, right? And creating allies, sponsors for one another.
Very true.
Yeah, that model, it doesn't work well from all but a few people, right? And so, and we are harsh in all the ways, that are really harmful.
Yeah.
We got it.
And then Vorika Hinata, I'm so sorry if I mispronounce your name, because you were saying I do not have programming experience. I come from business and real estate background. Tech is the future. Just jump in and start learning little by little. I'm just getting started in the field myself. So there is some of that, jump in and just get going, right? And that's one of the things that I think I've done. I just jump in and get going and then ask myself, how did I get here? So it is important. So we have 2 minutes left for our session. The comments in the chat have been amazing. The discussion, I was hoping we could get through all of them and get some other folks. Is there any burning question from the audience that we must answer before we leave? I know we had some tech challenges, but please feel free to put that question out. Let's use our 2 minute wisely before we wrap up with final words from our panelists.
So I do have a question. First of all, thank you so much for taking the time to come and speak about some of these questions related to inclusivity and especially women. I'm in my 50s, right? So when I first started, I'm an engineer. My background is in mechanical engineering, and they used to have what is called affirmative action. So I would like to know what happened with that. What happened with affirmative action that actually allowed people like me, who's a female Hispanic in STEM, get into corporate jobs, you know?
Mm-hmm.
What happened to the government and institutions that we have lost this inclusivity in academia and in industry, in students? I'm gonna pose a question and then go back to me.
Thank you, Maria. Who wants to take that? So we could take one person. Oh, Quincy, you got it? Okay.
My answer is short because we're out of time. I mean, lawsuits, right? That's the most practical answer. I mean, those people sued, and things changed. That's the short, honest answer. A lot more nuance to that, but yeah, lawsuits.
I have read that there is a change on how to recast that, and I want to applaud NSF for being very bold in creating the includes as one of their top 10 big ideas, even though it's focused on process, but still that elevated the importance of DEI.
Yep. So in other words, it still exists. It's just a different name. It's no longer called affirmative action, but there are still opportunities. We need to find allies. We need to find onboarding rank opportunities at various institutions. There are so many ways we can support each other. And one of the things that I've read is that sometimes your mentor does not need to look like you. Your mentor is someone who will champion your cause and support you. So folks, keep that at the back of your mind. I want to thank our amazing panelists who have been forthright in their comments today. Any last words before we all jump off to the next, to the break?
Well, I can say that we're all part of change. And so your voices need to be heard. I mean, you can reach out to me and the work that I do. And I'm sure everyone else on the call or on the panel today feel the same way, but we need everyone to make change happen.
Dr. Brown?
No, I don't have anything else to add to that. We're all in this together, and together we can make a difference. We can make a change.
Thank you. Dr. So?
Yeah, I don't have much to add either, but I'm very excited to, see the chat, the passion and enthusiasm in this topic. And thank you all for sharing your wonderful ideas with us. I learned as I participated in the panel as well. Thank you.
All right, so let's give our panelists a virtual clap of our hands. You can use your icon, and thank you so much for being here, folks. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and I look forward to meeting you at another session. Have a wonderful day.